Welcome to the InnerVerse. It's an illusion.
Welcome to the One Within All to the InnerVerse podcast. I'm your host, Chance, here with another mighty mind meld to enhance your manifestation effectiveness. As the realm progresses through Gemini season, it's all too appropriate to start asking big mercurial questions. As any Gemini will tell you, getting a behind-the-curtain peek at the inside baseball insights of high-performance doers is one of their most prized pastimes. And so what better moment than now to engage a conversation about the mechanics of success itself? As regards astrology, how does one's awareness of the cosmic clock evolve from hindsight to foresight? What advantages can we align with by honoring our own individual design? The future is coming whether we're ready or not, and no matter how distasteful some of its technological trends may seem now, nostalgia for bygone days doesn't typically put bread in our baskets. Luckily, we've got a thrivacious thought leader and guide to the good with us today to provide pertinent interpretations to the many permutations of possible futures as we stand at the precipice of our infinite potential. Her name is Ashley Mosaic, and as an esteemed advisor and coach to the big picture painters of our society, Ashley brings her compelling combination of strategies to clients to help them amplify their effectiveness and spread a little more love and kindness through their companies. By merging modalities like human design, astrology, epigenetics, and hypnotherapy, Ashley empowers purpose-driven leaders by illuminating their personal energetics with predictive analysis, gaining her a shining reputation as a relentless catalyst for positive change. Through her coaching and consulting, Ashley has played a pivotal role in both launching and rescuing several startup companies by helping their leaders to learn to lead themselves. And today we'll be getting a taste of her spiritual futurism and words of wisdom. Check the show notes for links to ashleymosaic.com and all the various ways you can support InnerVerse with our awesome affiliates, premium content options, and Biofield tuning services. And a huge thank you to all the clients and patrons who make this podcast possible. Now it's time for a quantum leap into the beautiful future with the Divine Dot Connector and Ascension Mindset Adjuster, Ashley Mosaic. Welcome to InnerVerse, and thanks for being here.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here. Hello.
Me too, if you couldn't tell. I'm amped. Yeah, but this is our first time getting to know each other. We had a mutual friend refer us to talk to each other, which I thought, that's awesome. Really trustworthy individual. So I would love to hear it from you. Like, how do you introduce yourself, what you do, how you got to where you're at, wherever you want to take that?
Awesome. Well, let's see. Like anybody's story, it certainly is not, at least most people, it certainly is not linear, right? It's been a lot of trial and error, trying to figure things out, a lot of asking why, and then, okay, now what do I do about this? And how do I move forward? Throughout the course of my life, I have always been somebody that has just been fascinated with the idea, the knowing that there's so much more than meets the eye. There's just no way that what we see is what we get, and that's all that there is to it. And then throughout the course of my life, having certain fascinations, having certain interests, and then connecting those dots with the other dots and the other dots. And that was where along kind of this path that was deep diving for many years into things like astrology and then human design and then gene keys and then frequencies and then chakras and all of this time, always feeling like I kind of had this sense of like what was around kind of the corner, or these trends, these themes that we were going to see playing out in the collective. And then I wanted to figure out like, okay, well, what do I do? What do I do about these things that I can kind of see maybe are going to be playing out? And then also like, how maybe do I theoretically, what am I kind of tuning into? So it was connecting all of these dots and learning various modalities, and through learning the modalities, connecting them. And that's where I now say I am an energetics and foresight consultant or strategist, because I use a whole bunch of systems, but it's in the synthesizing it. And if you hear something snoring, that is my dog right behind the computer. So he just made a really funny sound. So that probably will be heard, but.
We like dogs. That's okay. Wouldn't be the first puppy that's made a cameo on the show. And I noticed that you were born under the sign of Aquarius. So all of this talk about the future and technology and how networks work or the collective works, and also just knowing how dots are connected. It's so Aquarius. And was your own personal astrology something that led you towards utilizing the different skills and pieces of knowledge you've gathered along the way for the purpose that you use it for?
Well, actually, I'm a Capricorn. But I have my moon in Aquarius. And I feel
I knew there was something Aquarius about you.
Something. My moon and my Jupiter. My moon in Aquarius is definitely something that I see play out in every single facet of my life. So that's when you look to people's charts, right? There's these certain things, and then you see how they interact with the other components. And that was absolutely, though, as long as I can remember. I remember being really, really young and being fascinated with like the sky, and then fascinated with, extraterrestrials, fascinated with all these things. But there was even a period in my life where I wanted to be an astronaut. I wanted to get out there. I wanted to get out there and be about it. And then I think I had a telescope. My telescope got stolen. I was like, well, okay, figure out something else. And then it was like, maybe like a decade later, I got really deep into astrology. And in terms of, the Aquarian energy, absolutely, the Aquarian energy represents, it's this new energy. It is expansion. It is the evolution of consciousness. And it is also technology. And we see just this like rapid expansion playing out, but it's inner. And then the technology is a representative, or basically it's a reflection of us. I'll often say that as human consciousness expands, technology accelerates in tandem. And it's our job then to be able to balance those two. But I think all of that is incredibly Aquarian, for sure.
I like how you say technology reflects consciousness. If I was in a pessimistic mood, I would say technology is a plagiarization of nature. But in a more optimistic sense, I would say that what we perceive as technology that allows us to communicate with our faces and our voices across whatever distance and then transmit it to people in the future as well, that is an innate ability of consciousness or of what we truly are in our core existence. And then the narrative framework of the external world has the ability to shift around our beliefs of what is possible for ourselves and the tapping into our potential. So we have the potential to communicate psychically, if you want to call it psychically, or mind to mind, because we're all in the same soup of mind. There's just the one mind. And then our future is based on our worldview, and our worldview is based on our self-view. And the more that those things blossom into a higher level of potential, the more we have these seemingly magical technologies that are just at our fingertips and accessible, through which we can express what were otherwise innate abilities that we had a story before that said we didn't have the ability to do. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. I think it's absolute. We have a tendency also to, regularly give our power away with something we just all do, even, unconsciously. So even the idea of humans wanting to reach new heights, I want to have these new goals, rather than thinking, oh, how can I maybe activate more of my inner energetics? We do have a tendency to be like, we need to build something new. And maybe that thing that we're building, it truly is just a reflection of what we are attempting to tap into internally. But I think it's like you said, it's this blossoming that we all are experiencing, and we realize we need some new means, some new tools. But then I think it's essential for people to not just be aware of, but really be intentionally accessing your inner technology. Otherwise, I think that is, the optimist in me. I do feel I am very optimistic. I think humans are inherently good. I think that technology, evolving as it can, has capabilities to, in many ways, liberate humanity. In many ways, if done intentionally. But it never evades me how the, sort of dystopian timeline can also play out.
It's probably the case that it's just all of the above will be always here in whatever version of reality we're manifesting. But, we're talking about technology. I like to go back to the original definition of words, or the oldest definition I can find. And that word technology, before it was applied to things like consumer electronics, actually referred to language, as in like the terms of art or a jargon relating to a particular profession or skill. So talking about inner technology, that's your inner dialogue, right? Or your inner monologue.
Mm-hmm. So interesting. So even there's a couple gene keys and human design gates, like specifically, that will kind of reference the idea that words can build the bridge between heaven and earth. So it's interesting is thinking around it through that lens of that being like a technology that is, there's even, you follow the epigenetics of certain, not epigenetics, what is it called? What is the lineage of words
etymology.
Etymology, there we go.
Yeah.
There's that one, and then one of them means bugs, and then one of them means the other one.
Entomology, etymology.
That you break them down, you break down the words, and it actually is associated with DNA. And that is fascinating to me. Like, it's something that it's still kind of like where my head, but when they have done, where they've broken down even the syllables, and they'll break it down, and it's actually associated with the DNA. And that's when you'll see certain words will be similar throughout many different languages and cultures. Like the word ma and mom is like similar
exactly
to most languages. Just fascinating.
Yeah, that's a huge area of study in past podcasts. Actually, the universality of language. Once you learn the rules of like letter interchanges between different alphabets, all of a sudden you could be looking at German and you've never learned German or spoke it, but you realize the D swaps with T, and maybe this other letter swaps with that, and you are looking at a word in English now once you have those rules. And then DNA, if that genetic science is as it's sold to us, then there is a type of syntax to the different ways that is coding, which is endlessly fascinating. And then all of the modern technology is based on code. So there's language at the foundation of all of the magical stuff tech can do. And then astrology is a language, a big time language. And I wanted to ask, how does astrology work in your opinion? Do you see the stars as influencing us or reflecting us or something else, somewhere in the middle?
No, I do believe that there is the planetary influence. In many ways that it could be that the planets are a reflection of our reality, and there is some type of direct impact that is playing out. I also can see that it potentially could be, it's like it is our epigenetic encodings, that when we are born, there are certain imprints, and then these imprints can sort of be followed along throughout the journey of our life. But then there's a rational part of me that also realizes, okay, we can go this super mystical route, but then I was thinking, okay, I want the practicality. I want to have some type of universalization with it where we can actually apply this into our life. So then I think it could be the idea that there are just certain archetypes. There's just certain archetypes that are playing out throughout everyone, everything. So I can go super, what we consider like super mystical woo, super quantum. And then also there's just the deeply rational component. But all that I know is at the end of the day, there's absolutely something to it. I have, from when you see it in people's own charts, and then also when you see things playing out in the collective. It was I was in 2018. I was telling people, oh my gosh, something insane is going to happen in 2020. It's going to change the world forever. Government's going to pull all kinds of BS. I remember saying that too. And I didn't have any big connection with this so-called, supposed forecast. It was just kind of like, whoa, that's crazy. I wonder what it's going to be. But when you see these certain things in the astrology, I've said it multiple times. I've been like, man, if something doesn't happen during this time, astrology isn't useful, because there is just something absolutely without a doubt to it. I do not know what it is or why it works. I just know that it is incredibly insightful. Like, so when I'm doing my forecasts, I use a bunch of different tools, a bunch of different charts, different cycles. But I'll tell you, astrology is the equivalent of, if you're going to be like a meteorologist, and someone's asking me, hey, is it going to rain today? Astrology is you look outside, well, it's all gray. I see a bunch of storm clouds. And then I would pull out my other tools. Let me pull out my barometer. Let me pull out my wind thing. Astrology is first. It is that. So when I'm doing these macro or even micro forecasts, when there are just very clear indicators, it's, whoa, something's going to happen. This is going to be, whether it is a behavior, something that is really evoked in the collective, is it going to be some kind of an event? I don't know. But we can see these very, very clear distinctions. And then I'll use some of these other models, other tools, other systems, try to, get some more forecasts around possibly like what that could be. And even when you're looking at people's charts, it's just, there's a part of me that wants to, I want to know why. I want the rationality. And I don't think I'll ever fully be able to get that, but I just know it works. And then the deeper I got with things like human design and gene keys, you will just see these almost like markers, or these kind of just like keynotes throughout people's charts. And you'll see almost the same thing said in different languages. And when you see that, there is something so undeniable about what this connection is that we have with the cosmos. And I wish I knew exactly what it was, but I feel like that's where I can go into psychosis, right? And I'm like, I have to figure it out. I have my whiteboard out and writing it all down. So I try to marvel in the mystery of the universe while trying to solve it.
Well said. Yes. I'm with you. There's a bunch of different ways that you could look at it, and it would be true or appear to be true in all those contexts. And so I'm always, we don't live in a model. So that's why I appreciate multiple models simultaneously, because you can never really model something as infinite as the universe. But with the metaphor of astrology and meteorology, I think that the weatherman would probably be a lot more accurate if he was consulting astrology too, or first, because it's like the weather of the mind is what astrology is like. And we probably have all witnessed how weather seems to reflect our mood or our mind, including with weird immediate shifts. Which one is the chicken and which one's the egg, right? They're a mirror, but having our psychic weather comprehended is probably the most helpful thing. And, we just went through some sort of gnarly stuff fairly recently when Mars went into Aries right about the same time that Pluto went retrograde. I saw all kinds of very reactionary blow-ups. Some people, the more unconscious ones, were just swept away in that weather shift and then causing some, problems they regretted just a day or two later. And I wanted to, in the hindsight about 2020, what was it that keyed you in to something big was coming? Was it the nature of the Saturn-Jupiter conjunction or some other aspects?
It was the beginning of 2020, we had Pluto and Saturn come into a conjunction. So that happens every 30 years, but it hadn't been since the 1500s since it happened last in Capricorn. So Capricorn represents its authority, it's big business, it's big, it's it's government. And Pluto and Saturn are the two malefics. So you have Pluto representing transformation, revealings, death and rebirth, and then Saturn representing restriction. You had both of those coming together, and we then had a South Node conjunction as well. So that was all of that combination was, right? So it's something drastic, it's startling, it's shocking, it's transformation, it's death and rebirth, and it's revealing, and it's restrictions. You're like, oof, we know something is going to go on, something crazy. And then seeing, later on, we had like that conjunction. And then we also had, but soon after the Pluto Saturn conjunction was when we had Jupiter cross over that exact point. And right when Jupiter crossed over that point, that was on March 17th, when all of a sudden, like, the COVID stuff really hit the news, everything closed down. And it was just, like, I couldn't believe what I was seeing, because it was like so exact. It really took a lot of this mythical nature of it away when I saw it affecting the collective, like, in an insane way that was almost like exactly what you would expect if you were like, well, this is what it would be. And it was. It's crazy to me that still happened. And then even when we saw that same year, we had Saturn enter Aquarius. And right when it entered Aquarius, that was when a lot of the restrictions, they kind of got a little bit more loose. And then it retrograded, and it was like, put your mask back on. And it was to the day. Like, I felt like I was going crazy, because I felt like it was this system, this language that I was understanding, but other people, like, didn't know this. And now everybody was like, everybody was on their own trip very much at the time. So I was trying to tell people. And then while I was trying to explain it to people, I would see the reaction that I was getting. And I realized I sound like a crazy person. But it was happening exactly to the day.
Yeah.
It blows me away. But when you see that, one of the things with astrology, when you see it on the collective, it's almost as if a lot of these larger cycles that they are, whether they are doing something to activate the energetics collective, or if it is mirroring an event. But either way, just seeing it play out almost as, like, literally as it could be, based on what those aspects would indicate, is fascinating.
Yeah, we'll be reflecting on that time period forever. And the best part of
you pull out a mask, you're like,
I never had one, so
no, good for you. I ended up I was living in Los Angeles at that time, so many of my jackets had some masks that had to. Yeah, I'm now.
I got you.
I'm now.
No judgment.
After, though, I left, and I am in the woods, in the mountains.
See, that's exactly the point I was about to make, is whatever level people were at, whether already at a quite spiritually attuned point or totally, normie asleep, if you will, that 2020 time period was basically like, wake up or die. You're going to not necessarily literally die. It's more like almost wake up and die, because of the old self that had to be shed to step forward into the new place. So many people became hip to stuff like astrology through 2020, which for me, I'll just be grateful for that. And I wanted to ask, on the context of success, was astrology something that helped you succeed through that time period? Or can we talk just about the most effective ways to benefit from being attentive to astrology, generally speaking? I think that would be great.
Absolutely. So in terms of how it helped me succeed during that time, when I pointed out that Saturn-Pluto conjunction, that also happened directly on my sun, like in my chart. So that threw in a whole little additional element for me personally. Like, so for example, whenever I see somebody's chart and I see when Pluto has crossed over, there's their sun or their moon or even their ascendant, but especially the sun and the moon, there's a very distinct something happens. And not everybody gets it, because Pluto has a 248-year cycle. But oftentimes when I'll have a new client, I'll be like, whoa, okay, so what happened to you, right during this time? And usually it's something along the lines of like, well, what do you mean? There was so much, there was this, and there was this, and there was this, and there was this, and there was this. So I had mine exactly during that time. So it brought up a ton of this stuff, like kind of like my creepy crawlies, I call it all of that to the surface for me to work with. But it was happening simultaneously to kind of this mass consciousness rising. But when you look to the astrology of that particular aspect, it's significant. When you look to the I Ching, which is based on the mandala, there are 64 hexagrams in the I Ching, just as in there's 64 gates in human design, 64 keys and gene keys are all the same placements of that mandala, but they're positioned differently just based on the system. When you look to human design, gate 64 is the one's located at the very top of the head center. So it's like the crown chakra, it's the very, very top. So during that period, we had Pluto going through the gate that's all around inner truth and awakening and like the gate of mystery. And that is a particular reason why Ra, who was this kind of like the one who like downloaded human design a while back, he had said like during this period was like the most prime time for people to actually awaken. And this period's kind of closing out a little bit here because there's going to be some really big shifts coming on. But so thinking around why that period was so distinct for so many people, I would have to say that has to be a completely like very, very significant indicator of why that was. So then me personally, how did I experience success with that? It was just by me, even like before that happened, having an awareness that there was this really crazy, wild aspect coming on. And I remember it too. I remember saying, oh, the government's going to pull some BS. And people reminded me that I said, and I was like, this is that, you're right. Because it was just some very clear indicators. So by me knowing that, when stuff started to kind of go down and I was like, I'm just a dot connection. I'm just a dot connector. It's like, I see this. My brain automatically connects. Okay, that kind of means this. And within that period, there was a lot that just wasn't adding up for me. And I had a lot of questions. I'm a big time question asker. I think questions are so important for people to ask. And so me having that nature about myself and me having this awareness of this particular aspect, it kind of reinforced my belief that something weird's going on right now. But knowing that it was also coinciding when I had Pluto and Saturn on my sun, it made it feel a little bit extra intense for me. But I can't even, it was a crazy time to have that aspect happen because I'm like, it was during like the craziest time in history. So
it gave you a sense of scrutiny of what you were being shown, like, I might not know why yet, but eventually we're going to find out how there's something totally bogus going on and you're not falling for it.
I called it right away. I said, what? I've always been very attuned to patterns. Like if you only think around intuition, we don't fully know what our intuition is, but there's the understanding that our intuition might just be it is our body's mechanics, that primal part of ourself is picking up on things that our rational mind hasn't quite yet. So I was just like, something's not adding up. And that just kind of instilled in me this belief of astrology is really onto something as well.
Yeah. And then you brought up human design, which was one of the reasons I was curious to talk to you based on you doing that in a consulting sense. And we've luckily gone through a few human design episodes fairly recently. So at least the regular audience is going to have a good framework, or new people, if they want, can go back to look up some human design stuff in the recent archives. But I wanted to ask, what is human design to you in your own words?
Human design is our mechanics. So human design, it is building on top of astrology. It is really personalizing our astrology into like what we can do with it. So we have the same aspects, the same points, but when you put it into your body's mechanics, and it allows for you to really not just have the map, but suddenly have like the compass to walk through this map. And also I love the practicality to it. So I love astrology. I will forever love astrology. But when I was just doing birth charts, I had a lot of like, okay, what do I do about it? How do I make this work for me? I can't just be like, that's it. I'm just like sentenced to these certain things. I wanted to, what do I do about it? There has to be more. And it was through my quest of wanting to know, like, what do I do about this? Like, how do I make this work for me? Then when I came around on human design. And human design, studying it for a few years until I started then like going deeper into it, right? And working with mentors and all of this, and then started using it within my business with clients, and especially like through the professional lens, it's still been this unfolding story. But what I've loved about it is I feel like every single day, something is like dots are continuing to connect for me to where I understand why I've always felt certain ways about certain things. Because I think for everybody, right, we've had there's this mass homogenization that has gone on. Everyone's trying to be like this one figure of somebody, do things a certain way. But we can see that obviously that has not led humanity in the direction that, everybody is really fulfilled and super, super happy, right? There's a lot of just fragmentation that has happened within individuals and their lives, and people not even feeling like themselves and not knowing whose life that they're even living or why. But when you start studying your human design, it starts you off with these really practical, very practical things that you can do to begin moving in the direction that feels aligned for you. And I just loved that it was right when I started studying it, that there were just certain things like, you got to be kidding me. You got to be kidding me. Like when I found out that I had my sun in gate 61, which is all around the universal laws and the dot connecting, like that's like the only like gate that my sun could be in that I think I would feel that way about. Because it was just so exact and so precise. But then I got deeper into my moon and all these different things. And it had like another layer of depth. So when I'm starting to use it now, with all of my clients, but even I'm going into companies, and I've noticed now that it is beginning, it's on this, I feel like the edge. It's beginning to be viewed by people what things like Enneagram and Myers-Briggs were like, like 10 years ago. It's getting around to that stage now. And because it helps us not just understand who we are and like how to actually work with who it is we are, but to actually allow for us to unlock like the magic and the gifts that it is to be ourselves. Then from that space, we can connect with others and actually create more harmony. We can be more effective. We create greater impact. We use our energy more effectively. It really blows me away. And I have to remind myself to like, don't make it be a big deal. It's normal, but it does every day. I'm like,
I love this analogy that human design is the compass to astrology as the map. Mm-hmm. That really works for me. I, in recent times, studying it a little more, like, for example, going over some of the things in my wife's human design chart, we found her placement with Mars that basically informed us why there is a certain type of uneasiness around a certain type of situation or part of life that she kind of perpetually felt this specific flavor of uneasiness around. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that would be good. It was like an impetus to make a change. But then other times it would creep in and cause her to start rationalizing why she felt that way and not necessarily be accurate about those rationalizations. The way that our mind will take an emotional energy and then try to put a story around it, right? Mm-hmm. So looking at her human design chart, and we were going through it together, she's able to see, oh, I'm just kind of wired to see things this way. And sometimes I need to take a step away, detach from that feeling and ask myself, is that just, am I looking at things that way through my sort of natural condition, or is this really a problem for me right now? Without getting into too many specifics. But that was a huge breakthrough for her because it sort of allowed her to set aside a particular default negative feeling and instead move past it, grow through it, and see what was, look for what was useful in that particular configuration and try to tend towards that rather than tending towards the wound side of it, if that all makes sense.
Yeah, because there's always a gift. There's always a gift to everything that I believe this too. There's always a gift to everything about us, everything we've been through, our reactions, everything. There's a gift within it. And even so, when you look to something like gene keys, which is another system that kind of goes even deeper, it's more of it's like this, it's like this allows to this cellular transmutation really around like the frequency and like our genetic DNA. So we have two different Marses. So two different Mars, we have like the design Mars and the conscious Mars. So even when you look to gene keys, for example, your conscious Mars, that would be the Mars, the same one in your natal chart, that represents your EQ. So it's your emotional quotient. And then that would represent, it's going to be conditioning received during our second 7-year life cycle around how we have been conditioned to respond to emotional stress. So a lot of times, if you're in an argument with somebody and they respond to you from this other placement that's there, you'll respond from that one. So you realize, though, that it's always, it's like through the shadow, though, is always where the light gets in as for this mutation. But it's really powerful just to have an awareness of what these are, because sometimes the energies that can happen consciously, sometimes are happening completely unconsciously as well, which is the other Mars. The other Mars is the design Mars. But so if people know their charts, you have two different Mars. The design Mars in gene keys, it's your vocation, or it's even called your core wound. And that is wounding. And this thought to happen when you were in utero. So it was when you were before you were even born, but there's a clear aspect. And that one's really beautiful because you'll see it's like, it's almost as however it is you do, whatever it is you end up doing in life, it's through that energy, though, through the gift of that. But you're likely to realize that it's always going to be a running theme in your life until you are able to understand and get clear around what the value of that energy is. Like, for example, my Mars that I have, it's in the gate of conflict. So I've realized that I see the way that that's fit in with the rest of my story, that I'll avoid conflict, but then I'll have conflict with myself. So I've had to redefine what conflict is to me, but I did it through leaning into the gift of the energy, which is around diplomacy. So it'd be interesting if you go and look to see which one it was for your wife that it was, and then you go and look at the gift of that particular energy, and it's a very potent. It's a gift. It's all around having this gift is what we are utilizing to move from the shadow to this highest essence.
I really like this, using human design, even just in the basics in conjunction with gene keys to help understand, because someone will look up their human design chart and it looks very complicated, especially the body chart. Mm-hmm. And you have the design column on the left, the personality column on the right, and you see all the planetary glyphs. Mm-hmm. And if you really wanted to just kind of make it easy on yourself to go through things piece by piece, or you wanted a little more insight about one of your planets, you would go to, say, the Mars glyph on each side, and then just type into the Google search, gene key. For me, it would be on the design side, gene key 51 for Mars. Or so the design side, is that how you're coming off to others, or is it more your inner world versus the personality side?
The design side, I view the design side to be like our self-driving Tesla. It is the self-driving Tesla taking us through life. It can be considered the body. It can be considered that whole side of it there. It's more just the energy it was this encoding that we received 88 days prior to like our birthday. But there's an exact day, minute, hour. It's an exact, but it's roughly 88 in some hours. But that is thought to represent, it to be when soul enters body, or even when you're looking to things like a baby developing in the womb, there's actually a clear distinction. There's an activation that happens in the brain during that time. So when you look to human design, though, it is your body, it is the energy that maybe other people will see more in you, in your life. Whereas the conscious side, the personality side, is more of the energy that might feel more natural to you. So you have the two different sides. But that design side, it's also something that when you look back on your life, you end up seeing like, oh, okay, this is definitely an energy that has a lot for me to move forward. Like I'm a 1-4 profile. So my personality is the 1. I am the investigator. I am the researcher. You give me something, I'm going to learn it all. I'm deeply rational in that way. but my life doesn't seem to move forward just through knowing things. Like any kind of evolution, it does not happen in a vacuum, right? You have to have interaction. So my fourth line, which is like the vehicle taking me through life, that is, you can call it the opportunist, it's the networker, but it is an energy that I'm not always aware of, but I'll catch it in myself now knowing this. Or like when I was talking with my friends, I was telling my friends, like, oh yeah, I'm so introverted. They were like, what? You? What are you talking about? You're like a hummingbird. We always explain to people you're a hummingbird. I'm out there. But to me, I view myself sometimes as I'm like the person under a bridge. I'm solving riddles. You have to like solve my riddle to cross the bridge. It's like how I'll view myself sometimes because I'm so into this investigating, researching, but that's the other part of me. So my life has evolved a lot once I started having an awareness of that other part, because that other part, that design, that is the unconscious energy that is playing out whether or not I am doing anything about it. So there's a couple of really important distinctions, a couple of really important aspects to be mindful of on that design side. Well, there's a lot of them, but one I love to always work with my clients on is your design moon. Your design moon. So you have two moons. Your moons represent this driving force in your life, but your design moon is one that's happening completely unconsciously. But it represents your sphere of attraction. So it is an energy that is unconsciously attracting relationships to you. And within it, there's an actual energetic that's for the gate or for the key, but then there's a line in there as well. So the line, so for example, like mine is 34.5. 34 is the one of power. It's this gate of power, but it's a fifth line. So there's the fifth line can deal with like entrapment or sensuality. So it's this very powerful energy, but if I am not mindful of that energy, it can get used against me. It can, because I wasn't aware of it. And when I looked to how that particular energetic played out in my life, because it's the one I'm attracting relationships through, I was just unconsciously like, hey, oh yeah, let's do this. Let me give you all my power. Let me give you all my energy. Let me give you my power. Because I just like wanted to be about the relationship. It wasn't until I really, really did a deep dive into my chart, into my life, I was able to see these clear patterns, these clear things that were playing out. And when you look to your gene keys, your chart, the beginning of the entrance of your chart, like the middle of it, it all begins with that design moon. So it's like game changer.
So I wanted to use myself as an example for how someone might interpret their chart and just go for some bite-sized, actionable info. And you can help me understand if I'm more correct and answer another question about it. But if I'm looking at my design Mars, to just stay on Mars for a second, Mars relating to taking action, sometimes relating to conflict. My design Mars is 51, which is the arousing. It's the thunder over thunder. So the shadow of that is agitation. And then the other aspects would be initiation and awakening. So I could look at that and say, all right, if my behavior is seeming to cause a lot of agitation in other people, it's not them, it's me. Like I need to reframe where my desires are and where I'm taking action, and then witness, okay, do people seem to be inspired to take initiative, or even better, do they seem to be inspired to levels of awakening just by me being around? Like I don't have to do it to them or for them. It's just about my priorities on my desires and what actions I'm taking in life, just as a whole, right? And if I get those aligned, then I would sort of just naturally be instigating awakening in people or initiative to good things, right? But in the shadow, I would be just like a constant agitator.
Well, that particular energy is really interesting. That is the energy of where we had the eclipse on April 8th, where we had the eclipse. So that's a really, really powerful energy. But that specific energy is already using initiation. So taking action to get us out of this space where we just feel like, everything sucks. Everything is so hard. No matter what we're doing, we can't make anything work. And you're using that energy of initiation to kind of have this breakthrough. And you're breaking through, ultimately getting to this highest essence that's all around this awakening. But that energy is also called the gate of shock. So what that energy can be is it can be one shocking event, another shocking event. And the thing is to use initiation to break out of it. So actually to use that agitation to be like, that's it. I cannot take any more of this. Because what people can do with that energy is they can actually absorb the shock. So it can be something insane happens and you can be like, oh, there we go again. And you just absorb it. So you can almost have this Eeyore-like attitude at the same time when you're like, whatever, here we go again. So it's absorbing the shock only to then be shocked by something else. To actually see how that agitation is actually, it's like the wound, but that's where the light gets in. That's where the mutation happens. So the agitation is also designed to serve you. If you're agitated and doing nothing about it, then you're not moving forward. But if you're agitated and you're taking an initiative, that's that energy in action. But it's that energy, it's going to be happening more unconsciously. So maybe it's like you feel this, sounds like, right, you, and it's the energy too of which you are going to be having this vocation. It might not be what you do, but it's how you do everything that you do, right? Like this podcast, a perfect example. Somebody who is, this is your design Mars in action. Because it's like how you do everything. So it's even realizing that where you do have agitation, that's a cue for you to, like, what are you going to do about it? What are you going to do to actually move forward? And it's around creativity too. It's a very creative energy around using like creative initiative. The idea that we don't really have any problems. We just have things we haven't quite figured out yet, right? Like, oh, what a fun problem you get to solve. What are you going to do about it? So really allowing for yourself to have that spark of initiation. And it's a very, very, very powerful energy.
Okay. So for me personally, using me as the example, I would want to try to be mindful and look for repressed agitation in myself and use that, like look for the source of it and then use that as an initiator or to initiate something new or something to shift so that to alleviate the agitation, but also as like a sort of springboard into something better. That's pretty cool. Yeah. And then my personality side, I have 16, which is enthusiasm.
Awesome.
So that's super powerful.
That's where the sun was just a few days ago. The sun was recently, and in 16. 16 is all around enthusiasm, around skills. In Gene Keys, it's magical genius is what it's called. And that is an energy where it's all around versatility. So it's doing this, doing this, doing this, doing this, doing this, following the joy. And you're following the joy to ultimately get you to a place of mastery. Because the shadow of that energy is indifference. So when you're like, ugh, I don't even care. I don't want to do any of this. This all sucks. It's like, oh, go find the joy. Find the joy. Because when you see what that energy is opposite of as well, you're doing the joy. Because opposite of 16 is 9. So 16 and 9. 9 is this energy of it's like, you got to do the things to get up the mountain. So the way that works with the other one is skills, enthusiasm is what ultimately helps you get up the mountain.
Yeah, it's like 9 is like small actions create grand deeds.
Yeah,
It's the taming power of the small. I'm a big I Ching guy before I even got into human design and stuff.
I love
so
it.
That's helpful.
I connect these systems. Once you connect them, I feel it's like it opens it up and it almost becomes this like living, breathing thing. It's not just symbols. It's a living thing that we're moving through and moving with. But when you look to those, they're such cool placements to have Mars because they're both around really doing things, like doing it, making it happen, doing it, making it happen. They're both around bringing something new into the world and really moving forward. And that's like really it's a lot of action, which Mars already is around action. But you can see with both of yours, it's really around this energy of also like doing big things and having fun with it. And the indifference, though, knowing that is your personality Mars, the 16, that means that's going to be your EQ. So that could be from the ages of 7 to 14, various conditioning that you received around stress. So maybe it will be like, do you find like if you and your wife or someone, you get in an argument, does your shadow end up being kind of like indifferent? Do you find?
Yeah, I guess so. It shows up more in like work-oriented tasks
Okay.
where my effectiveness drops to 0 if it's not fun to me.
Okay. Yeah.
I've realized that about myself a long time ago that, and I'm realizing too, is that maybe some of the ways that I guide people in my one-on-one work with them doing biofield tuning could be enhanced if I started just asking for their human design chart or something to just have on hand or on file during a session, because, maybe the advice I would give to myself about a profession, for example, or about just what to do in life, which is if it's not a hell yes, it's a hell no. Maybe that's not exactly the way to put it for somebody else. I think that it applies to everybody, that you can live that way, but maybe maybe I'm seeing it through my own personal lens.
That's something that I always find fascinating. So, for example, like on Instagram now, all of a sudden everybody is everyone's a social media expert, how to make content go viral. And I love when I'll look to these people and I'll see what their techniques are. And then some of them I've been able to go find their birthday. And I'm like, oh, I get why that works for you, for certain people, right? Certain people, certain things will really work for them. And it's a pretty clear indicator. It's indicated in their chart. So for you though, like having like the fun, that whole like fun, I mean, I think everybody wants to have fun, but that fun is a very third line energy.
Oh, well, mine, it's a 16-3. So
yeah.
Maybe it's,
yeah, like just that, anything to do with like fun, mixing it up, changing it is like, that is the third line. So like the third line, that's like the F around and find out energy. I always call third lines, because it's like, you have to also have like the persistence. You have to find a way to like make the process enjoyable. So that's you got a third 16.3.
Yeah, I got that wrong. It's the 51.3, 16.2. But leaving me aside for the time being, although I think it helps to have an example person, how do you fuse human design and other avenues of like analytical foresight when you're doing consulting for businesses or for individuals or coaching? I'm curious about that. Maybe even like a success example.
So people that I work with, they tend to all be very purpose driven. And I believe we're moving into a phase where everybody is becoming more so, because we need to have some kind of like a fuel to inspire to actually move forward in life. So it's becoming activated in more people. So I'm very fortunate though that I work with people that either they have a very like mission oriented project, or they're just starting to launch something. So when we're looking though to the larger collective cycles that are playing out, there's pretty clear indicators of whether it is like how the markets are going to do. Right? So is there going to be an influx of, is money going to be more so flowing, or is it going to be people are going to be not having as much money to go around? So maybe then that would say for a business that's more around, okay, putting some lower price point items out. But then as well as, okay, some of the market demands, are we going to be in a phase where there's going to be a big focus on our community? Or is there going to be a big focus on new community because the existing communities aren't going to be as strong and as prevalent anymore? So all of that's playing out. But whatever we see playing out, it's not so much about just like what is happening. It's what it means for you specifically. Because we are all really living same life, but yet very different lives within this same journey. Everybody has like their own path, their own journey, but we're this shared collective tapestry. But I believe that everybody has a distinct role to play. Or if it's not a role, it's a way that they're designed to do things. This is where we see people's epigenetics, we see people's charts. So when I'm working with these clients, I first help them get really attuned to their strengths. It's a tendency we have to really diminish or dismiss the things that come easily to us. And it could be because we're so hyper aware of the things that we're not good at, that we're like, this stuff, I don't even care about this stuff. I want to be good at these things. Or it could also be the things that come so easily to us, we don't even realize we're good at it because we might think, I don't know, can't everybody do this? And then no, not everybody can do this. And we need the people that can do these things to be aware that this is something that they're very skilled at. And it always fascinates me that people so often, they're not really clear on those things. Tell people like maybe they'll realize they're good at that, but they also haven't thought around, well, how do I use that to like make my life easier? So once you're seeing that, to help people get clear on their energetics or strengths. But then we have all of this conditioning, all of this stuff that has been built up because we've been making things mean certain things in our life. So there's a lot of conditioning. So then this is where it's the strength, but then it's the mindset component. We have to not just be the one that can we know what we're good at, but we have to get rid of the things that have been preventing us from embodying that. And now once we get to this sweet spot, we can really help put this on this and put it into what is playing out. So I love it when I think it's just it is so much fun for me. It's so much fun for me. But seeing these things in people's charts and then you help align them with it. And then you put it into the collective stuff that's playing out. I've had companies I've worked with, they've immediately, I'll go in and I'll do the charts for 5 to 6 people on the higher level at a company. I'll immediately go to their charts and then we'll have a session where we advise on strategy based on making sure that, this person is really good at the idea curation, really make sure, that this is their special sauce is actually having these banger ideas. So when they have an idea, giving it a little bit more attention. People over here, these people are really good at building. They can skip steps, putting people in the right positions as part of the larger whole and mission. Another thing as well is making sure that mission of the company, everybody feels connected to that mission. That is something that is so important for people that want to continue to have companies and have employees going forward. As people are awakening, people are becoming more aware of their own inner workings. If they do not feel a connection with something that they're doing day in and day out, guaranteed they're going to find something else. So I've had companies I work with help them advise them on the strategy, and I love it when they will immediately go and put these things into practice, get new clients, they'll sign a new PR team, they're doing these things, and you'll see these energetics play out. And it's the color returns to people's faces because they no longer feel like they are fighting the world with everything that they do. It's flowy.
I've never considered how powerful it would be to create that synergy between coworkers or leaders in a company by looking at all their charts together. But that's quite an interesting strategy. And I can only imagine that would be highly effective. And maybe take some of the depression out of the workplace as well, where, you feel like you're constantly having to do the thing you don't like while watching somebody else do the thing you want to do not as well as you would do it.
Yeah. And it really is when people are able to use their energy effectively. So everybody wants to feel seen, heard, valued, but everybody also really wants to feel like an effective, a member of society, of a business, whatever it is, it actually is contributing. People don't want to just feel like they're not doing anything. And so if we think around technology, like we discussed at the beginning of this conversation, technology accelerating the way that it can, if done properly, can eliminate some of those tasks that are repetitive or even dangerous that people aren't really passionate about. Freeing people up to do the things and put their energy into things that actually feels expansive and feels like it's creating impact, and they're being able to put their purpose into something. And also people just feel better. They feel better. They feel more alive. Think of when you're doing something I remember when I was in, way back when I was in school and having to sit down and do long division. I was just oh my gosh. It was just I remember just feeling the soul in my body just leaving, because I wasn't, not only did I not like doing it, but I wasn't trained to do it in a way that didn't make my head feel like it was splitting open. And then nobody helped me understand my own strengths of maybe how I could put those numbers together in a way that would be so much more expansive for me to do, and also wouldn't be reinforcing a belief that I'm stupid or bad at math.
Awesome.
There's just so many ways for people to do things. But when you see people's charts, there's very clear indicators of, oh, you're probably going to view life a little bit more abstract. Let's lean into that.
Right. Leaning into it. Really cool. And we're actually, time's flying, but we're already at the point of wrapping up our first part here.
Cool.
And I'd love for you to share any closing words for our free audience and let people know how they can work with you, where they can find you, anything that you want to promote or share. I know you have a lot of stuff going on, so, definitely as long as you need to explain all that would be great.
Awesome. Well, my website is ashleymosaic.com. On the website, there's a ton of information. I have a resource for every single gate, key, and hexagram. I also have a resource on the website where you can go and get a free report and chart for your human design. And I've broken it down to be where it's extremely practical, very practical and very universal. We were able to immediately take these things and put them into practice. That's completely free on the website. And also on the website, you can book a free strategy call with me to see how I can help you. I work a lot with executive entrepreneurs, conscious leaders, innovators, really purpose-driven people. And I also will work with organizations. I'll go in and I will help advise on the energetics of the individuals to help them work together more cohesively. And then I use some foresight to advise on whether it's the offers, how they are positioning themselves in the market to make sure ultimately you're aligning your strengths, mindset, and mission with the future.
Awesome. So you guys out there, I know a few of you have got to be listening from like an office job or something. And if you got the ear of an executive or one of your bosses and you think that the company could use a shakeup, I'm sure it would be fun to have Ashley come in and, rock everybody's world with a brand new view of the company's potential. That would be really cool. If anyone does that, will you let me know in Telegram or with the email? I want to hear the story. Or I guess Ashley can tell me too if that happens. But we'll wrap up part 1. It's been awesome. Thank you for hanging out and looking forward to the next half where I got tons more stuff to ask you about. We barely scratched the surface. All right, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to another great episode, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. I'm very grateful to have met Ashley. Special shout out to my friend Nick, who hooked us up with this meeting. I think it was in perfect timing to speak about human design and the future. I mean, it's always the right time to talk about the future. But with all of the recent episodes where we discuss human design with Sophie, I think that this one just brought a little more sprinkles on top of that nice package of understanding. And I feel closer to comprehending my own human design chart than ever. I'm not going to say I fathom all of the arcana of that system, but we're getting there. Something I do recommend if people are trying to figure out how to read their chart or just want to take it, really you got to take it piece by piece, right? One little spot at a time. I have this deck called the Tao Oracle. You can see here, holding it up. And it's one of my favorite. It's the first Oracle deck I ever received. It's how I learned the I Ching was using this deck. And so if you were to get a copy, they're not that expensive. Not only would it be a useful divinatory tool, but you could look at all the planetary numbers on your human design chart and then go to the corresponding pages of the book and have yourself a little session of deeper contemplation about what kind of feeling or state of consciousness each of your planets might be resting in on your human design chart. Pretty awesome. So in the Plus extension, we had 10 extra minutes of goodness, not just an hour, but it was about 70 minutes. So grateful for that too. Plus members will enjoy. We discussed what does it mean to be a futurist. We forecasted the sky clock around 2027 to 2030. We discussed what might be down the pike with blockchain, a very honest conversation about that, which I appreciate. Discussed the energetic keys to financial thriving, abundance, self-worth, their correlations in the biofield, how we price our services or our goods or our artistic craft. We discussed the importance of aesthetics to success. What's the right mindset there? And the philosophy of getting startedness. It's a phrase I coined about, doing the thing. What are some mental frameworks that allow for and facilitate an easier initiatory process to our life path goals and our side hustles is a better way of putting it. And then the last part I was not expecting we talked about using ChatGPT to do a deep dive analysis on your own life story and how that might be useful. It's interesting because all this future stuff, it also corresponds to the past. And I couldn't help thinking about when we were discussing futurism and just thinking about it as a subject, how there's kind of a downside of it it shows up in the third eye, particularly in the Biofield, that you see stuck energy in people's right side of their head that corresponds with putting off their sense of well-being or their sense of I'm okay, or I accept myself, or I'm good enough on some future state, some future goal, typically like once I have done this, or once I have this, or I've achieved that, then I'll be good enough. Then I won't be so hard on myself. I'll be satisfied. And the problem with that type of thinking and how the Biofield demonstrates this is because the stuck energy is not, it's off balance, right? That means if it's off balance now, then at the future state, even if you achieve that goal, it's still going to be off balance over there. So it's like the goalposts get moved, and we have to be able to pull that back in and be satisfied, whole, complete, self-assured, love ourselves, accept ourselves, regardless of what we have or haven't achieved or received or gotten or done, right? And the nuance of that on the left side of the third eye is interesting because it came up just the other day in a Biofield tuning session where a lot of times the left side third eye, right? Of course, if the right has to do with the future, then the left has to do with the past. That's definitely true. And most of the time what you see with stuck energy on the left with the third eye has to do with your typical PTSD repression. And that can be tricky because you don't necessarily know what you don't know, right? Sometimes we come across some kind of repressed memory, and because of the fact that the memory is repressed, we don't necessarily have the ability to go and figure out what that memory was. But there's also a dynamic that goes on with the left side that just has to do with your past self in general. And this was the dynamic I'm talking about from a recent client session where what needed to happen was the past version of self needed to be accepted. And I asked the question to this person. I was like, if you could meet your, 16, 17-year-old self, because this individual was in their 20s, I was like, what would you say to that guy? And I got, the typical answer that I expect when I ask somebody that age a question like that is, well, I'd tell him to do this, or I'd tell him not to be like that, or yada, yada. It always had to do with like correcting. And the thing about your past self and the things that you did and who you were, you can't correct it. It happened. It is what it is. And so with getting your energy into proper flow with the third eye, with your imagination capacity, which also has to do with stuff like hearing and seeing, it's not just about accepting and being good enough now, but it's also accepting and being good enough in the past. So whenever it comes to like describing your relationship to your past self or thinking about past versions of yourself, rather than thinking about all the ways that you used to suck and how if I met that young guy, I would give him a talking to. It's a great trick to just imagine, especially with our teenager self, right? Imagine meeting that younger you as if they were not actually a younger version of you, but you were just meeting another person who was exactly like the younger version of you. And how would you feel if it was a more objective and you didn't have like skin in the game? You weren't kicking yourself because it was you. If it was just an objective meeting, what would you be in admiration of about your past self? What would you like? And that's something very powerful to rewrite in your story of how you consider where you came from, is to focus on what you admire and what you liked about who you were back then, rather than all the things that you would revise and correct, which you cannot do. Because whenever we have that type of negative perspective on our younger self, we often repress the good qualities that we had at that age too. I know this from experience. When I finally figured this out, it was a huge unlock in my ability to trust my path where I was at in the present. Because when you're kicking the younger you, you're kicking you. And I was definitely doing that for a long time. there's a bigger story there. But if you guys are interested in the whole plus extension, which I was just alluding to, lots of good stuff about the future and success-oriented mindset. You guys can get it on Patreon, patreon.com/InnerVerse, Rockfin, ROKFIN.com/InnerVerse, or my YouTube membership program, subscriber program, whatever they call that. So there's 3 different ways to support the show. I think Patreon's your best deal, and it's got all of the archive of my old stuff. And a reminder about that, if you are a patron, there's a link that you have access to on the homepage, the InnerVerse page, that you can copy and paste into your iTunes podcast app or whatever podcast app you like, and it will update the RSS feed for you as if it was any other normal podcast. So then you're not having to go to Patreon website or to their app. You're just getting it in your feed, and you set it and forget it. Just go ahead and stay subscribed. $5 a month isn't that much. I would like to have Ashley back, though. I hope you guys feel the same. She might make a good vibranter. Actually have half of the stuff that I was going to ask her about still on the table, particularly about things like AI and quantum computing. I wanted to know more of her thoughts on those things. Other exciting stuff in the channel news, I guess, is the patrons and supporters can look forward to Inner World episode 5, the exclusive members only show that I do with Dylan Sakosio. Episode 5 is coming out sometime this week. Maybe the point you're hearing this, it might be tomorrow or the next day, very soon. And that's for patrons and YouTube only. It doesn't go to the shared membership pool of Rockfin. Sorry about that. If you're a Rockfin sub and you want to jump over to Patreon instead, if I'm the only one you're watching there, you're going to get a better deal for doing that. Rockfin's like 15. But if you like the ability to get all the other creators that Rockfin has, I appreciate that. And they have a good app and a good website. It all runs nicely. That's where I like to listen to Owen Benjamin most of the time, and it works great. So this Inner World episode 5, very excited. We're finally launching a new episode of that. We have a special guest. I'm sure you guys know him, the great Crow 777. And we're talking about the Reverend Robert Taylor's Astronomico-Theological Lectures. This is the guy that basically coined astrotheology as a term and a valid perspective for analysis, openly anyway. I'm sure in the behind closed doors, what do they call it? The esoteric Christianity probably always had that perspective, right? But definitely not the exoteric. And he went to jail for it. So he's a hero. He's a great writer of the early 1800s. And we're talking about in this episode with Dylan and Crow, the tragedy of Lazarus, how Lazarus's story is astrotheology, the guy that Jesus resurrected, and how the whole story is framed up like a tragedy, like a play. I mean, not like a tragedy as in boohoo, but literally it's a stage performance and there's all the cues there in the scripture. It's pretty amazing that just goes unnoticed. And that story is particularly weird because you'd think, and I wanted to say this because I didn't mention it in the actual episode. It was 2 hours of good stuff though. That Lazarus's resurrection by Jesus, you would think would be such a big deal that it would make it into all of the Gospels, but it's only in John. So according to John, Jesus had a bestie and that guy died and Jesus resurrected him. That should be like a world famous event if it was real history. The very least, you'd think the other apostles would talk about it. But apart from the Lazarus aspect, we also talk about why belief in religion is not the safe side, why it's actually, even scripturally speaking, smarter, I guess safer is the right word, wiser, and less room for hypocrisy, which is its own type of punishment, its own type of dishonesty, to just be in the state of unbelief about stuff. So I loved it. It's a great conversation. Very excited to put that out. Subscribers, watch out for it. Other things you can do to support the show. Really think Lotus Way has turned out to be an excellent affiliate. I'm seeing lots of you ordering stuff off of the link in the episode notes. So Lotus Way, LOTUSWEI.com/InnerVerse. And that's how you would kick the 10% commission to yours truly for getting awesome flower elixirs. And I do see a lot of you guys doing that. Great way to support me. Love that. Appreciate that. And I want feedback from y'all about how you think it's working. Are you enjoying the flower essence elixirs? Do you think that they're effective? I want more data because I'm promoting this currently. From my own personal anecdotal experience, they're great, but I want to know what you guys think. So let me know in the Telegram group. That's something linked in the description too. Jump in there, talk about Katie's flower essences. And there's always Tippecanoe herbs, of course. Using InnerVerse as the coupon code there. Another great place to pick up some plant medicines and support a great guy, Kyle Denton and his family, who we will be seeing on an episode of InnerVerse very soon. I can never get enough collaborations with that dude. He's a true buddy. Love him. Love his whole family. So support them. Support InnerVerse, Tippecanoe herbs. And of course, there's always Biofield tuning. That's still going strong. At this point, we're looking at August bookings. So if you want to get some tuning done before summer's end, let's do it. That's crazy. I appreciate you guys supporting me and signing up because I'm definitely staying busy with it, which is awesome. I love doing it. I'm going to get out of here. Well, that's kind of a long outro, but I'm feeling it. Love you guys. Take care out there and be good, and I'll see you on the next one.